I have a stateful class component for my counter with no state. In this step, we will add state to the counter, modeling it as a TypeScript interface, doing testing along the way. I have my component on the left, my tests on the right, my visual test runner at the bottom, keeping me safe. I'll start by adding a failing test. It fails because it looks for the counter span, expects it to be 0. Of course, it isn't 0. Instead, it's a 1 because everything is currently hardwired. With my failing test in place, I can start the implementation. I'll make an interface for iCounterState. And it's going to have one item in it, a count, which is a required number. My state now goes into the generic as the second item of the generic. I'll need a constructor that's passed the prompts, and I can put the type information on it. First thing you do in a class is to call the superclasses constructor with the prompts. And now I can set up my state. Thanks to the interface, I have type completion starting at 0. For example, if I put in an X here, it would tell me that that's an invalid value. With that in place, I can come down, make the change to make this dynamic. Again, I get autocomplete. And when I save, I've now wired up my counter to give a value, an initial value of 0, so all my tests pass. I'd like my component to allow you to pass in a prop for the starting value. I'll add a test for this. The test will not only fail, but TypeScript will fail faster by telling me that my counter component has a property start right here, which isn't allowed on the interface. So I'll go up to the interface for the props, and I'll give an optional start, which is a number, and then come down to my props, give it a default value, and then change my state setup to have the count start at props.start. Now when I do that, TypeScript complains correctly that I'm trying to assign an undefined to a number. Why could this be an undefined? Because I put a question mark there and said it was optional. My first choice for solving this comes from TypeScript 2.7's definite assignment assertion, which says to the compiler, I know that this is correct, but that doesn't help because ESLint doesn't parse that correctly. A fix is coming. So I can't use that for the grammar. Instead, what I'll do is a type guard. I'll make a local value for count. And I'll say, if there's a props.start, then use it. Otherwise, use 0. And then come down here and refer to that as my count. Now the TypeScript compiler is happy and my test pass. One last thing to do, we haven't wired this into our parent component, the app component. I'll come over to my test and I'll take this test and I will duplicate it and say the span should be 0. And because this is a deep component mounting, it will go down to the counter and use its default value.